Welcome to this video on an overview of Canva and especially how to create sermon series logos. This logo right here will be the goal that we'll do today. So you'll get to know Canva a little bit and we will work from the design area in Canva to create this. In other videos, we'll look at how to build it from scratch. Sermon series logos can be really helpful at sharing them online and having them on your website for organization. It can really just make the experience for the user as they're browsing your sermon series to really enjoy it. So I think it could be done in a way that honors the Lord with good artwork. And Canva is an incredible tool to be able to create that for your website and for social media. So I'm right in the middle of Canva, obviously, but I want to show you from the very beginning what it would look like. So I've already created a couple designs, and that's why you're seeing those here. This is a list view. You can also change that to a grid view. I have it in a list for now. Canva can look very overwhelming. There's a lot of things going on here. On the top, when you first log in, this is very similar to something that you would see. If you're seeing this as a white background, that's because I have, in my settings, I have it on dark mode under the accessibility tab here. Right when you go to settings, it goes to your account, and you'll see here, I'm on dark mode. So yours might look like this, but I really prefer the dark mode. It makes me focus a bit more. So I'm going to go back to the main page here. I would highly recommend you getting Canva Pro. It's inexpensive for your church's budget, and it is well worth the cost for what it can do for you. So as I go, I am working with Pro. So if you are only working on the free version, you may have some hiccups along the way. You're not going to be able to use some of the design options or a lot of the elements options either. You won't be able to upload your own fonts. You won't be able to do a couple of other things like have a high quality JPEG or PNG image. So I highly recommend paying for Pro, even if you can do a free trial just to see what you can make as you watch this video. That could be very, very helpful for you. Long term, I think it's well worth it. It's cheaper than Adobe products, but can almost do the same thing. So we'll get started. So the first thing that you should consider is the size of the logo you're trying to create. For now, I think what we should focus on is what can we put on a website and perhaps YouTube at the same time. If you have Pro, if you start with one creation, you can resize it. And we'll talk about that. You can resize it to go on to any other location. You want to put it on Facebook, you want to put it on Instagram. You are going to have to manipulate the size a bit for it to really work well on all of those. That's the one downside with being on so many platforms, is that you are going to have to resize things because not every platform is meant to be, this is a 16:9 ratio. This is a video ratio or commonly a featured image ratio that you'll find. But check the ratios. You can Google search the ratios, obviously, but typically if you're going to be doing a YouTube logo or a featured image logo on your website, you're probably going to be working with something that's 16:9. You can ask us if you're with 5 More Talents, or you can ask your web administrator, what should the size be for this? And they should be able to tell you. And again, you can Google search what's the ratio for Facebook and Instagram. It can change. So this could start to get outdated in a couple of months as things change their ratios. They do it maybe once every couple of years. It seems like the ratios change. So it's really helpful to know how to resize it. But for now, we're going to work with this 16:9 ratio here. Okay. So how you get started, I like to go with custom size because I know exactly what I need. It's 1280 by 720 or 16:9 ratio. You do have some other options here, social media. Just click on it and see what they have here. Instagram post landscape, Facebook post landscape, Instagram story, reel, you'll see these here. YouTube thumbnail, 1280 by 720. That's what I'm creating. So I could just click on that. If that's helpful for you, that's awesome. You're also going to get inspired looking at a couple things here, right? But I'm actually going to do a custom size here and create a design. So I got there by, you can click on any of these and you can get to custom size or your social media. But from here, sorry, I'm going to click on the custom size and I still see all those options here. This will always pop up. It'll just pop up highlighting the one that you chose. So I'm working in pixels. You can change that over here in your units to inches, millimeters, centimeters. You're typically going to be working with these two here. And I know that the ratio is 1280 by 720. So I'm going to create that design. It's completely blank. And this is what you're going to see. You're going to, at first, more than likely, see the design come up first because the Canva's trying to help you create something. They've made a lot of stuff ahead of time so that you can go ahead and use one of these. This can be really, really helpful at getting started. Because it's a 1280 by 720, Canva is assuming that you're making a couple of different things. One could be a PowerPoint presentation. One could be a YouTube logo. They're going to give you a lot of different options here, and you can even search for things in here as well. But if we get inspired, maybe we'll find something that could really be helpful. So I see art and nature here, and I'm already inspired. Oh, the sermon series is something to do with nature. So instead of scrolling and scrolling endlessly, I'm going to search. Now we're still in this is just dealing with the design area. We will get into these other areas later. I think just for this video, we're going to stick to design. These are pre-made designs that are going to fit 1280 by 720. This will be a quicker thing for you to help you create your design fast. So you'll see here, I've got some recent ones here. I could click on that, but I'm just going to go ahead and type out nature. So you'll see it's got some suggested things that happen as well, but maybe that will be helpful. But I'm just going to type in nature and then hit enter and see what happens. A lot of really beautiful things here. And I'm going to go to this one here is pretty neat. As I hover over it, I'm leaving my cursor there. It's actually going through quite a few, it looks like slides. It looks like this actually is a slide presentation of some kind. I really like that first one. So it's a pro. So you'd have to have pro to get this one. This would be a non-pro. That's something to point out here is the little king crown. As you hover over, you'll notice it'll start to say pro. You can only click on those if you have the pro version. And it's well worth it because most of the best looking things are going to be in the pro version. So I'm going to click on this and then it's going to say, oh, do you want to apply all these images? Are you making a PowerPoint presentation? You could. If you at your church for the sermon or maybe for Sunday school, you use PowerPoint a lot and you don't have a quintessential design you're always working on, then Canva makes designs like this for you to take advantage of as well. I just want to use this first one. And just so I don't get confused and it seems like there's so much going on, I'm going to click on this little arrow here, get that to go away, and even that's still there. If this is still here, it's bothering you, I think you can just click anywhere outside of that, and then now we're just looking at our image. So you'll notice that what I created here is very different, but I started with this, believe it or not. So we're going to go through the process. Now you could use this just the way it is. Eternal hope. Great. That's a great tagline, right? You probably have a sermon series name that you want to use though. So the idea is we want to actually use the name that you have. We want to use a typeface or font that really goes with this background and things like that. We want to put your logo into there as well. So this untitled design, how do we do that? The first thing to look at, so we're only dealing with a design that's pre-made. There's a lot going on here, and as I hover over all of these things, you'll notice they're showing you that that's an element of some kind. It's highlighting it in purple there. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. You can zoom out by I'm using a touchpad, so I'm pinching in and out. However, there are different ways you can do that on your own computer to zoom in and out, or you can take this slider here and zoom in and out. Okay, so this is an element. It's highlighted in purple here. If I click on it, you'll notice this area just popped up. This is the editor tool. I'm not sure what they call it in Canva, but this will have to do with the thing that you've clicked on. It's talking about removing background of that photo, flipping it, looking at the transparency, cropping it, animating it, what its position is. Now, some of this we are going to go over, so it's going to make more sense as I go on. But what about the text box? If I click on the text box, that changed drastically because we're dealing with text, obviously. It's going to give you the typeface, the size, the color of that text, whether it's bold, italicized, underlined, all the stuff you're used to if you're dealing with text in Word or a document of some kind. The alignment, if we can turn it into a list, spacing, which we will get into. You can even have transparency on this text, and sometimes that can be what you're going for with your design. We can give some effects to that text, which we won't in this, but just to kind of give you a little bit of a insight into that. That's what you can do with this. You can stylize the text a bit. You can animate it, but we don't want to do that. And position, which we will talk about in a moment. So as you click on these elements, they're going to change based on what you've clicked on. And the background, this kind of shimmery gold area is the background. And that's important to know. It's set to a background. Typically when you're dealing with a design like this, something's going to be set to the background. You can't really move that. There is a way to detach it, but for now, I'm not going to mess with that right now. I do want to show you, though, that all of these are in layers. So obviously what we can see is that the text here is probably on one of the top layers. This text or this text is going to be on the topmost layer. And then underneath that is this image that's in a circle here. Next up is this image that's also a circle. And then the background layer, which will always be the bottom. So Canva works in layers, and you're going to have to know that as you edit things, take things away, and things like that. Where can you see these layers? If you're confused, where is this thing? It's behind this. It looks a little interesting how they have this set up. So if you click on position, wherever you've clicked, doesn't really matter. I'll just click on this image here. If you click on position, you're going to get this sidebar that pops up here. It has a lot of things. I'm not going to go over the alignment to page in advanced. I'm not going to go over that right now. What I typically am dealing with, and what you'll typically find you're dealing with, is the arranging these layers. You can bring them forward, backward, to back, to front. This should look familiar if you're used to dealing with the Microsoft Suite, where you've got arrangement options. Well, also on this one, I typically will click on layers to actually see those layers that are there. I can see it's got all the typed out, and it's got the images, and it's got the background. So instead of staying in arrange, I suggest going over to layers. Overlapping, I just go to all. They seem to always be the same. You don't typically have something that's overlapping in a strange way. So I just leave it here at all, layers, all. Here's all my layers. Okay. So now I can see barely, but this image, which is this one, and it highlights it, which is really helpful. If you're wondering what am I dealing with here, it's going to highlight it in purple. And this one are the same image, but flipped. and blown up more. So this image is just the same as this, but upside down. For what I want to do, I actually want to get rid of this back layer here. So if you're in this area, you can do this many different ways. You can click on it here. You don't need this open. You can click on it and hit delete. Or you can come in the layers area since you want to make sure you're deleting the right one. You're going to click here in the 3 dots. And you're going to see, you can do a lot here, but we're going to just delete it. Okay, now I'm left with this shimmery background and this circle and this text and this thing. Okay, so that's what I'm left with. So again, just to give you a reference, somehow I made this by dealing with all the stuff that I was given. I really like this photo. So how do we get it? How do we get that photo out of the circle? What if we don't like that circle? You could still use the circle. You could just use this as the as your image. Let's say we want to change this text here, obviously, because eternal hope is not the text that you want to use. You want to use heaven or heaven and earth. That's the title of your sermon series. So heaven and earth. We've got a couple things that are wrong here. It's stacked. You don't want that. You want them more side by side. You want and on the same level as heaven, and you just want earth below that. Obviously, that's kind of, or heaven and then and earth below that. However you want it. You don't really like that. You don't like the font or typeface. And now it's not centered. So what are you going to do? Well, we'll focus on one thing at a time. So just the text. One, it's not centered. This is true. But maybe before we center it, we should probably figure out what font we want this to be. Now I'm just, you click once, I'm getting just that top. If I click for a Mac, I'm clicking 3 times. If you need to, highlight the whole thing. Start from here and drag. You're highlighting the whole thing. So we're going to be dealing with the entire area here. So I'm going to change the font. And if I to do that, highlight that, click on the font that it currently is, which is Gotham. And then you'll see all these fonts come up. If you have the Pro version, you're going to see a lot more options for fonts. If you are able to have the Pro version where you have a brand kit, you're going to be able to upload fonts. I won't go into that, but you are going to be able to do that. Downloading fonts off the internet and then uploading them into Canva. It's pretty neat. So if you have a particular font for your church, you want to upload it, you can do that. So I'm going to change this font. I just have to remember what this was, the Seasons. Okay. I think I found the font called the Seasons online. So I'm just going to look that up. There's a lot that come up. It's going to try to really be helpful to find that particular font. So I'm going to change that to the Seasons. And for that one, I have a light, regular, and bold option. You'll usually know that you have more options by this little caret here. I like it like that. I think that's what I did here. I think it's just a normal light. Oh, it's regular. Okay. So let me change that to regular. Oh, it was bold before. All right. So, okay, I've got heaven and earth actually now on the lines I want them. Heaven and then and earth below that. Now, is it centered? I'm going to try to figure that out. So if you get in this bind where you can't quite grab this, you don't really want to edit the text. You actually want to grab the element. Sometimes that gets a little bit, annoying in some ways, but I'm going to click on something else. And then now I can click on the element and just deal with it as an element instead of text. And then I'm going to move it. And now you're going to see that Canva has a really nice feature where it locks it into place based on where other things are or based on the center of the whole the whole area. You can center it and you'll kind of feel it as you move here. It'll lock into place and you see these lines that happen here. I'm just holding and then dragging. So now I know it's centered now. That's pretty neat. I actually kind of like this, but I want it to say a series. Okay, I'm having a little trouble, I guess, on heaven. Okay. Now, again, if that happens, heaven and earth, and you don't like that, you can take any of these text boxes and expand them because they were just created this way, but you can actually expand them. Expand, 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 okay. And then you can move them to the center like that. But actually, I just want a series on heaven. There we go. Keeps it in the center. So this could be your thing. I can't really read heaven and earth very well though, and there's a couple things we could do with that. But let's go back to position just to look at what we have here. Okay, we've got the background, we've got this thing. Now this thing, the circle with the image on it is not quite noticeable at first, but this is what's called a frame. You may have heard it referred to in the Adobe world, it would be a mask. So it's actually, what you don't see is that this is a circle frame, is what they call it in Canva, with an image on it. So I'll show you that by doing this. So I'm gonna do a secondary click or a right click where you see other options on this element. And then I'm going to see that something is able to be detached. So I'm going to detach the image from the frame, and we're going to see what happens. So here's the image. Don't fret. There's the frame. The frame is actually upside down, so this image is actually upside down when it comes into the frame. So we can go over frames at another time, but if you're dealing with a design and you want to extract the image, you don't like the frame, that's how you can do it. Now, frames are really neat because if you have a frame on here, you have an image. If you drag it over just slightly, it'll start to take on the image into the frame. It'll lock it into the center of the frame. So that's how that works, is that these frames, as you have an image that hovers over it, it will kind of suck it in and it will become part of the frame. But again, I actually want to detach that. And I want to use this as my background. Still trying to suck it in. I need to get rid of this frame now, basically. So now you'll notice the layers are all off. That's okay. We can still deal with that. So I'm just gonna click on the frame, and I'm gonna hit delete. Again, you could come here and, hit delete from here as well. Now this is in front of these, so what we can do from here in the layers area, again, we go to position, and then if it's stuck on a range, go to layers. We're going to move this down until it gets behind everything. That's where I want it. We're getting there. I actually don't like this background. It's a little too shimmery. And so I actually want this to be more of a solid color, and I want the color to kind of come from the photo. So what I can do is, if I'm on the background here, I'm going to go to background color, and I actually want to colorize this. So because I'm using a pro version, I've got a brand kit that I've got a couple things on, but what you should see is the photo colors. You'll see the background color is just one color, but the photo colors, this could be really, really useful at trying to pick out either a font color to go with the photo that you have on there, or helpful for the background like I'm about to do. So I'm going to choose this dark brown, and I think maybe I may have darkened it more on the finalized version. I'm still not quite done though, because I want this image to actually go all the way beyond. So you can click and drag the image, you'll feel it, and you'll see that it locks in place here. What I mean by feel is that you can't quite adjust it like you're wanting to. It actually just, you'll notice that it locks in place. And I can drag this all the way to the end here. I kind of want to center it a bit. Yep, I want to center it there. Okay. I like how this looks so far. Let's see, just as a comparison here, yeah. So I got this image to be a bit darker so that the words pop. This is a big thing with these images is that you really want the text to be shown and be obvious. You don't want people to have a hard time reading the sermon series phrase or word that you have. So how can we get this to pop a bit more? So this is a little bit of a trick. If you just want a whole image on the background like I have here, it really matters what's in the background. So I'm just showing you that's the color in the background. Now I think on this one I darkened it a bit. So I already know that I'm going to want to do this. So I'm going to take this color. This is a darker color. You'll notice it's picking up two colors, the color here of the text and then the color of the background. This gets into some little tricks as well, but any of the colors that you see, they're going to have a little code, this little hashtag 56413B, hashtag 4B5360. Every color digitally has what's called a hex code, and that's what that is. So I'm actually going to take this hex code. I'm just going to copy this, go over here. Now I could find the color. I'm going to change this background color. So again, I'm selecting the background color. You could come over here. This is the background color, or we can say new color. But I'm going to try to find it on here. I think this is what I did before. I wanted it darker, so you can kind of drag this and just kind of see where you get. Like, oh, that's a little too gray. I want it to be a little more brown. Okay. So this is what I did initially, but I really liked the color that I found. So here in the hex code area, I'm going to highlight all this and then paste that other hex code. Yeah, it was just slightly darker. So that's the color I want for the background. That matters because I'm going to move this back into position, center it. There we go. That matters because this is going to go transparent a bit. This photo here of the mountains. So we talked about a few of these things. Position. Now this one could also flip. We could do that maybe. Flip vertically. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. I like the dark on the bottom, kind of how they had it before. But I want the text to pop out more. So anyway, we're going to we dealt with flip. You can deal with crop, but you can also just drag the corners and crop it yourself. But now we're going to deal with transparency. And I'm going to take this down, and you're going to see what happens here. Because I'm making the photo transparent, you're going to start to see the color from the background come through. Because if we go all the way to 0, it's the background color. So this image is starting to basically blend with that brown. And so it really matters what's in the background if you're going to do transparency. If I did white, then the image would get much lighter, but I actually want it to be darker. So I'm just going to see what I did here before, what the transparency is. 24. Okay, I think that was about, but that was about there. 23. Okay. It's almost there, but I would think that this text needs to be a bit bigger. I want that to be obvious when you see the sermon series logo. So I'm going to guess that it's about 100 or maybe 120. Now I'm in a pickle because this is obviously not going out wide. Don't worry, if you can take these and drag it out. Take that, drag it out. It's still a bit wide. Okay. Other things that may be not working in our favor is there's a lot of space between these letters. So I'm going to highlight this whole thing, and we're going to deal with spacing here. This is inevitably going to happen if you're dealing with a pre-made design, is that the spacing of the letters and the lines, so the line spacings between these here, and then the letter spacings between the letters. The line spacing needs to be turned up, in my opinion, and then the letter spacing needs to be down a bit. Now I've got some good letter spacing now. Okay, heaven and earth. I'm going to center that. You'll see everything's in alignment now. Beautiful. Heaven and earth. Okay. That looks about the same. I think I changed something about the typeface maybe. Oh, it's just slightly different maybe because of the spacing, I think. Or it's possible we did bold or regular or bold or something like that, or light. You can change that. So there it is. I think the last thing to do is to add, if you want to, you could add your church's logo to everything. It could be centered on the bottom, on the right, on the left, wherever you want it. So let's do that. So if we go to where you have your logo saved, this one is a really particular one that we're helping out right now. All you have to do, and this goes for dragging a photo on as well, but all you have to do is just drag this over. Now that is really in the way, and I don't want it centered like that. I want it a lot smaller. Just use the same tools we had before. You're just going to take from the corners, wherever you feel more comfortable. I like coming from the bottom right, taking the corners, and make it sort of readable. So I'm just going to move it down here. Same line as this, seems about right. Give it a little space. You don't want it all the way to the edge. White space is what makes things look really good. So if you see things online, you're like, what? Why does that look good? It's probably because the designer had white space between a lot of things. That's one of many things that makes things look really good. It's just giving it some space on the sides here. You don't want this all the way to the edge. You want some space to really give the eyes a chance to focus on that thing you're trying to bring the eyes into the center. So give it a little space on the side here, and I think if it wasn't aligned with this, it might look a little strange. So we could align it here. We could even bring this down a little bit, just slightly. Bring this down to it. That looks pretty good. I'm going to get really picky here. I think that looks pretty good. So when you're done, you want to save it. You also want to probably name it something that's going to help you. So you come up here to the top, name your item here. So Heaven and Earth logo. However, it helps you find it later. Then we're going to go to share. You're going to see a lot of options here, but we're going to go to download. Obviously, that's where we want it to go. And you're going to get quite a few options. Is this a JPEG? Is this a PNG? Is it a PDF? Is it a GIF? You have a lot of options here. For now, let's just pick PNG. And only if you have the Pro version can you make it even bigger, all the way to 4,000 by 2250. You could have started out that way. For now, I'm just gonna go with the one that I made it, 1280 by 720. I don't want to do any of these things. There's no need to have a transparent background, but with a PNG you could. But there's really nothing that it would create as transparent because we don't have a white background in this case. So I'm just going to click download, and you'll watch it go through this process of downloading. And then, boom, it is downloaded onto your computer, wherever your downloads get saved. So that could be, for me, it's going to be in the downloads area here. For you, could be in another folder somewhere. So that is how you create a sermon series logo.